I call this special call meeting of the Carrollton-Farmers Branch ISD Board of Trustees to order at 6 p.m. on August 18th, 2022. Board members, district staff members, and members of the audience, you are free to join me in standing as the Pledge of Allegiance is led by Trustee Kim Brady, and the Pledge to the Texas flag is led by Trustee Cassandra Hatfield. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Welcome to staff and visitors and everyone here and everyone who may be watching online. It is a new school year. We're excited to be here, and we are CFB proud. As a district, we dedicate all our efforts and resources to our goal of high expectations for all. The board uses this goal to guide all deliberations, decisions, and actions. You will get to see all deliberations, decisions, and actions of the board in open session, with the exception of some items which may be discussed in a closed session as stipulated in the Texas Government Code, Section 551, commonly known as Open Meetings Law. These items typically deal with personnel matters, consultation with our attorney, and real estate. For the record, the board members present are Tara Arbachik, Sally Derrick, Cassandra Hatfield, Kim Brady, Ileana Garza Rojas, Carolyn Benavides, and myself, Les Black. We constitute a quorum and may conduct business on behalf of the district. We will move to item number 2 on our agenda, which is 2A, our state accountability, district announcements, state accountability, and I will turn it over to Dr. Chapman.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to give you the information in front of you today. On the 15th, TEA released their final ratings for the 22-23 school year, and I'm so proud of the fact that of what our students have done and our teachers and administration and the work that they've pushed through. As you recall, going through the last 3 years was rough. And what we're going to do on September 1 is we're going to give a detail of the improvements we've made. But just on an apples to apples, not talking about anything in the last 2 years, but in 2019 we had 25 A and B campuses. Today in 22 we have 32 A and B campuses. And so not only did we perform above and beyond in the 19, but we've surpassed that in the lull that we had. And so if you see a teacher or an administrator, you just need to give them a big shout out of the work that they've done. We'll really dive into the work again on September 1 when Patty Parker comes in to give a presentation. But this was just great news. I sent this to you late Monday night when we got the results, and so I just commend everyone for the work they did in 68 distinctions across the district. So just a lot to celebrate right now. Also in front of you, you have a gift, Mr. Hill in the back, and he wanted to butter you up by giving you a little gift tonight from the transportation department. So if you see him as we walk out, doing a remarkable job in transportation as we start. And as we all know, anytime you start a new year, you have some hiccups in transportation. Never seen a year that you don't, but I tell you what, he is on it, and the way he's communicating with parents is exceptional.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. That's indeed good news, and thank you for the bus-related gifts. The school bus holds a special place in my heart. And we are really excited, and we want to thank all the staff from Dr. Chapman down to every single person in every single campus, on every single campus in the district for working through these last 2 years and coming out with even more A and B campuses than we had the last year before the pandemic. So that's great news, and we look forward to hearing more.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments or questions from the board before we move to agenda item number 3? Okay. Audience for guests is agenda item number 3. Anyone wishing to speak either as an individual or representative of a group may do so during this agenda item. Ms. Grant, do we have anyone wishing to speak at this time? There are none. Okay, thank you. So we will move to agenda item number 4, which is a public meeting to discuss the 2022-2023 budget and proposed tax rate. The time is now 6:05 p.m. As established in Texas Education Code sections 44.002 through 44.006, the process to adopt the annual budget and tax rate for Texas public school districts includes a lawfully posted public meeting during which our constituents may participate. Anyone wishing to speak, either as an individual or as a representative of a group, may, during the administration's presentation, submit your request to do so on one of the forms provided on the table just outside the boardroom door. You may place the completed form in the box provided on that same table, or give your name and completed form to our administrative assistant, Laura Grant. Following the presentation, you will be invited to come up to the podium and speak to the board according to the forms and names received. Comments should pertain to the 2020-2021 budget and proposed tax rate and be no longer than 3 minutes. Mr. Guerra will begin with a presentation before we open the floor to comments from our audience. Mr. Guerra?
Thank you, Dr. Black. The Board of Trustees, thank you, Dr. Chapman. So as you know, tonight we're here to propose the budget for adoption by the Board of Trustees, followed by the tax rate adoption, and in that order according to state policy.
And for the record, it's the 22-23 budget.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's correct. So as you know, we have three budgets that require adoption by the Board of Trustees: the general fund budget, the debt service budget, and the child nutrition budget. So we'll talk about the debt service budget first. The existing amount of debt we have at this point is $336 million, and of that, with our debt service book, as we refunded a little bit of debt last year, we have a scheduled debt service payment this year of $54.6 million. And just to kind of give you a breakdown how it looks like, $54.6 million is the payment for the 22-23 school year, and you can see it by the blue line. The blue bar is the principal that we're paying, which is a little over $44 million, and the rest of the red part is the interest that we'll be paying. So you can see the 22-23 school year is $54 million, and then it drops significantly to about $30 million for the 23-24 school year, which sets us up good as we start to bond plan for the upcoming year. So the next budget we're proposing is the student nutrition budget. And as you know, it changed a little bit this year because not every child was eating for free as the laws changed that we get out of COVID. So as you can see on the second column was the proposed budget last year was a little over $16 million, and all of it was from federal funds because they were paying for every child to eat lunch. So this year it's going to go down a little bit, and we worked a lot. You met Kristen Hessel at the last board meeting, and her and I worked closely together, and she's, I guess we're rubbing off a little bit on her. She's real conservative as we were in our budget, so she cut where she needed to cut. And like I said, it's really hard to estimate how many kids are actually going to eat. So she was conservative in the revenue she predicted for local funds. But you can see we're proposing a balanced budget of $15 million for the Student Nutrition Fund. And the general operating budgets, which is our general fund budget, is the large budget that we pass every year. And you can see it's a little over $314 million this year. And it's based on projections that we came up with in the business office. And I can just say that, Zach and Giselle are here tonight, and they worked really hard. We worked hard all summer, and to get to this point where we can propose a budget to you, and it's kind of a race to the finish. So, I kind of commend them for all the hard work they did. Nobody ever called in sick. Nobody took days off. And this week, auditors are here from the state to start running our audit for the 21-22 school year. So with kids coming back and the audit here and the budget kind of a drop, so it's been a lot on them. And I really thank them for all the hard work they did this year and this summer. But the number we came up with is a little over 25,000 students, and that's how we based our $314 million budget this year. And how we kind of came up with the 25,000 students, you can see after the 2019-2020 school year, we had a significant drop in kids, close to 1,000. And then we did have a little recovery last year. This current year that's finishing up about a little 1% more. So we estimate it kind of conservatively. This way we can make sure we budget accordingly. So we had another 1% this year. So that's why we came up a little over 25,000 kids this year. And this is just kind of a snapshot of the budget. On the far right column, I know we said it was $314 million, but the red number right above that 277 on the first section is the recapture payment that we pay for being a Chapter 49 school district, and that's what everybody calls the Robin Hood payment. So this year it's estimated roughly a little over $36.3 million. So the actual revenue we'll take in the end is $277 million. And like I said, the revenue we estimate is based on, as you know, property value taxes. And you can see there was a significant jump from 2021 to 2022. We're almost at $30 billion in property wealth as a district. And on the far right column, you can see the significant jump. It was almost 13% jump this year in property value assessed. So I'll talk a little bit when we talk about tax rate and why the taxes look like they do, even though the rate's been compressed. But you can see the significant jump in property values for our district. So what does all that kind of mean? So the property value, since we are a property wealthy district, a Chapter 49 district, you can see roughly 84% of our total revenue comes from local property taxes, and the state comes up a little bit more than 14%. So you can see we're heavily relied on our local property taxes to pay all of to generate all our revenue. So I broke it down by function. $314 million is basically in 3 big sections. So I'll talk about each section at a time for you. The first big section is all the instructional and instructional support, which is everything directly related to kids. So you can see it's everything: teachers, all the librarians, the principals, school leadership, counselors, nurses, all that stuff is kind of in this thing. And you can see it makes up close to 70% of the entire budget. The next big piece is our district operations budget, which includes that recapture payment of $36 million. And you can see the recapture payment alone is 11.6% of the entire budget. And of that 28%, it's roughly 41% of that budget as well. So everything else has to go into this district operations budget, which is all the utilities: water, electric, gas, maintenance, custodial. And like again, the recapture is the big part of this budget as well. And the last little piece is the central administration, which is all the district leadership. Everybody here, the central administration, building communications, human resources, finance, the tax office, everybody is part of that, roughly 2.9% of the budget. So the next part we're proposing is the tax rate. And you can see on the far right, since we did increase so much, almost 13% of property values, they compressed our tax rate under the maximum compressed tax rate of 0.8941 cents. So they compressed us down to 0.8046 cents, which is tier 1. And you can see our gold and copper pennies are part of it. So our total M&O tax rate is 94 cents. And you can see it's down almost 6 cents from the year before, and over 11 cents from the year prior. So the 94-cent tax rate, along with our INS tax rate, which we've maintained for the last 4 years now, gives us a total tax rate of $1.14. And you can see the year before it was a little over $1.20, and it's been compressed every year since House Bill 3 has taken place. And again, like I said, we have all the tax rates from the local districts that went through the end of 2021. You can see that $1.20 that we had this current year is the 3rd lowest of every peer and district in our area. And again, we're being compressed again almost 6 cents. So we'll probably be in the bottom 2 or 3 again this upcoming year for 22-23. So the hot topic, I guess, has been the tax rate and the verbiage that the state's requiring us to use, saying we will pay more taxes this year, more taxes than last year. And this kind of helps clarify a little bit what they mean by that. Even though our tax rate's been compressed, you can see the average house value was $268,000 for this current year in that first column in white, and the tax rate on the bottom is $1.20. So that means the average tax resident will pay about $3,220 in taxes. But that same house value this year is going to be appraised a little over $290,000, so it's gone up significantly, over 8.25%. And even though the tax rate's been reduced almost 6 cents, they're actually paying more tax, a little over $4,100 this year. So that's why the state is requiring us, and they don't allow us to change any of the verbiage. Everything is verbatim how the state requires us to report how we're actually paying more taxes even though the rate's been compressed. So kind of just to say, if your house had stayed the same value, if it was at $268,000, you'd be paying between $150 and $200 less this year. But again, with the values going up so much, even with the compressed rate, you can see how the actual values went up like $900. And kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on is the fund balance. There's been a lot of talk in the state legislature over the last couple of years, every time they go into session, that before they wanted to let districts go out and request a bond, the state requires you have about 3.5 to 4.5 months of fund balance. So what they've been talking about lately, because there's some districts that have large fund balances, so they wanted to say, well, before you go out and you request a bond, we want you to spend down your fund balance to get back to that 3.5 to 4.5 months of fund balance. So what we did was we kind of got proactive and we committed $41.5 million of fund balance. This way our fund balance, and I'll show you in the next slide, our fund balance, if it was unassigned, to be 5.5 months of fund balance, but since we assigned $41.5 million, it puts us back around 3.8, a little over 3.5 months of fund balance. So that keeps us well under the threshold, just in case the state comes back and says, hey, let's start making the district use their fund balance for bond projects. If you have any questions, I'll take them at this time.
Board members? Ms. Derrick?
Mr. Guerra, I have a question for you about the verbiage that you were talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
So just to be clear, the recommendation is going to be a tax rate decrease, but the language that we have to use states that it's an increase because homeowners are essentially paying more because their houses are valued at more. Is that correct?
That is correct. Even
Okay.
though they've compressed the rate, like almost 6 cents, the verbiage was clear. They even gave us a template, and it's in bold, it's in capital letters. They won't let us change. They won't even take it out of bold or put it in lowercase. Everything has to be exactly as they put it out for us. So everything that we've done is in exactly how they are requiring us to do it.
Okay, so just so the general public understands, though, the tax rate that we are going to vote on is a decreased rate.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay.
It's a decreased rate of
6
almost
cents
6 cents.
decrease. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Just making sure. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions, board members? Mr. Bacek?
Thanks to you and your team for putting this together. I'm in the middle of my budget process and it's not fun. I do want to point out as well the no change in several years on the INS tax rate, and that was a request and requirement from our Citizens Committee in the 2018 bond that they did, and so I think it's commendable that we've been able to implement the improvements that we have without raising the tax rate, and that that is good planning and good financial management overall. So, and I appreciate that we've maintained and met that requirement that the citizens placed on us to do so while going out for the bond. Just to clarify, you had the number of the 314 million. That's reflective of the entire budget. I mean, that's our budget.
Yes, ma'am.
And so looking ahead to another agenda item for an amendment, I mean, this appears to be a reduction in this year's budget. Am I reading the numbers correctly?
That is correct. Last year, the budget was based on the demographer's prediction for enrollment, but with COVID hitting and the enrollment down so much, we never got close to those numbers. So we met with us administration, Dr. Chapman, and said, and we recommended that he let us kind of base the enrollment on historical data instead of projected data. So we used kind of what we knew we had. Like I said, the start of school, I think we had a little over 22,000 kids, which is about 700 more than we had last year at this time. So the target number we have a little over 25,000. We would like to hit by snapshot day, and that's the important day that we report to PEMS. So we're well on pace to hit to the little over 25,000 by the snapshot day, which is at the end of October. And since the first day of school, we've have over 1,900 kids added since that very first day of 22,000. So we're about 24.2, so we're pretty close to where we want to be, and we feel we'll get there by October.
Okay. And does this, I mean, we've seen increase, well, it was a priority for us for the increase in compensation. I mean, that was a board-defined priority for compensation for staff and teachers. the increase, but this budget that we're looking at, the 314, also encompasses estimates for the increase in costs that the district is seeing across, I would assume, every category in our budget.
Absolutely.
Just like we're seeing
Absolutely.
in our own homes, but
Yes, ma'am. And the reason that like it might look a little like it is lower than it was last year is because there was a lot of open positions that we weren't able to fill. So a lot of them we were filling this year, but a lot of them we're using ESSER funds to use as well. So it's helped us keep the budget where we need it to be, just in case we don't hit the numbers that we projected this year, like we didn't reach last year.
okay. And outside of compensation, that was board defined and that was a priority for us. Where is, I guess, the highest increase that we've seen? Is it because in construction, since we're doing a lot of construction work? And I know that's not out of our operating fund, that's different, but where are we seeing the cost increase that is impacting, I guess, the district overall?
I would say, yeah, non-general fund wise, it is the bond. Like I said, the last piece of the bond of the $350 million was taken out in 2019, so we're getting through the bulk of that right now. We sent a letter to Dr. Chapman and saying that this past week was a big week because we had to pay recapture, we had to pay our bond payments, we had to pay construction payments, and as a district we spent a little over $44 million in a week, so it gives us a little angst, but yeah, the biggest payment easily is recapture. Like I said, they give us a bill and they say pay it by this date, and it was a little, like I said, $36 million this year as well, so.
Right, and that is state defined.
That is state defined.
That is state defined by law, and there's nothing we can do about that
There's
right
nothing we
now.
can do about that. Yes, ma'am. And like I said, it's directly from local property taxes that we have to pay this money back to the state.
Okay, well, I just appreciate the work in monitoring the spend, especially with the changes that we had. Like I said, with the compensation, I know we did adjustments in the classrooms for
did.
class allocations and, trying to get more resources out, and that's, a priority for us. And all of that with the increased costs and, pushing a lower tax rate down to the community.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And like I said, we're always looking at refunding possibilities, which, as you know, is kind of like refinancing. If we can refinance, which is refunding a loan, then over those 30 years, we just did one recently where we refunded almost $15 million, 14.7, I think, and we saved close to $2 million in interest. So we're looking at another refunding possibility in November where it's about $12 million, where at this point we can save about almost $900,000, but we're waiting to see if the rates will come down. This way we can save a little bit more, and then we might pull the trigger, so to speak, and try and refund those as well to save a couple more $1 million in interest.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions from board members? Oh, Ms. Derrick?
I was going to let everyone else take a turn. Okay. My final question is about the cliff that we know is coming and how that was taken into consideration with the development of this budget. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. The formula transition grant is what you're speaking of, and in the beginning it was a little over $24 million, and we knew that the cliff was coming, but the state went ahead and took the cliff away for us, so they started taking the FTG lower and lower. So this year I think it was $11 million or so, so it went down significantly from the $24 million that we were expecting every year. So we've been kind of bracing for that, and they, like I said, they're helping us brace for it as they take the funding away slowly instead of taking it all away at once. So we've been mindful of the cliff that's coming, but.
So you feel, I wouldn't say good because we're losing money as it's being taken away, but we're in a place where we're responding appropriately to that.
Yes, ma'am. Like I said, we sit as a budget team and kind of analyze everything. We start looking at where we can save or what we can prioritize, and whatever, like I said, is involving kids first is what we do not cut. So we try to be aware of, because we know it's coming, but again, it went down so significantly this year that we feel we're in really good shape to handle it when it does come in after 23, 24.
Okay, thank you. And I definitely second what Tara says. Thank you to your team for all the hard work, because this is not an easy feat by any means. Thank you.
I know. I get to stand up here and look at you guys, but they really do all the hard work, and they're the brains, so it's fun. Patty's Espinosa's our director of finance, and like I said, everybody's really worked hard. And then for the auditors to come this week probably wasn't the best time, but everybody did it and everybody was here, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bocek, go ahead.
It's not the money, but I do want to make the statement that we are upcoming into a legislative year and a legislative session, and as we saw on the screen, that the local contribution, local contribution has been increasing while state has really not done their part to fund our public schools and public education. And it is upon all of us to advocate for full funding for public education. We recently saw the news. The state has a big pot of money, extra money, and we need to advocate for them to increase the allotment and providing from state so that the burden is off of our local community members. And I would urge our community members to advocate for the same.
I agree.
Thank you. Anyone on this side of the dice? Okay. Mr. Guerra, thank you very, very much, and thank you to the team for putting the numbers together and bringing us this very informative presentation. At this time, the board will entertain questions and comments regarding the proposed budget and tax rate from the floor. As explained before the presentation, interested individuals who have submitted a request to speak will be called to the podium. Ms. Grant, have you received any forms or names indicating interested speakers? No. Okay, hearing none and seeing none at 6:26 p.m., this concludes our public meeting. So we will now move to agenda item number 5, which is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is a mechanism that the board uses to approve a number of routine items together with a single vote. In compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the public notice for this meeting includes the list of all consent agenda items, and the board has been provided ample information about these items in advance. Prior to any action taken on the consent agenda, board members may request the withdrawal of individual items for clarification or discussion. Board members, are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda at this time? Okay. Hearing none and seeing none. Board members, do I have a motion regarding the consent agenda? Ms. Derrick.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, I have a motion from Ms. Derrick. Do I have a second? Second from Ms. Brady. So we have a motion to approve the consent agenda item as presented. Is there any discussion? Okay. With a motion and a second, no discussion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? With a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed, the motion carries. So we will now move to agenda item number 6, which is items for discussion and or action. Agenda item 6A is items removed from consent. We didn't have anything removed from consent, so we'll move to agenda item 6B, which is to consider or approve the 22-23 final budget amendment for Carrollton-Farmers Branch ISD. Mr. Guerra. Is there anything you'd like to add, Mr. Guerra?
No, the final budget amendment is just basically moving. Sorry about that. The final budget amendment is required by the state, and they want us to make sure that we have enough budget in that cover the expenditures. So we do a final budget amendment at the end of the year to cover all the expenditures if we ever move between functions during the school year. So this final budget amendment covers those that are required by the state.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Guerra.
Sir.
Do I have a motion regarding this agenda item? Ms. Hatfield?
I move that we approve item 6B as presented.
Okay, I have a motion from Ms. Hatfield. Do I have a second? Yes. Ms. Garza-Rojas?
I second that.
Okay, I have a second from Ms. Garza-Rojas. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. I see 7 hands up. Anyone opposed? I guess not. So with a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed, the motion carries. We will move now to agenda item This is 6C. Agenda item 6C. Consider approve the 22-23 budget, including execution of a resolution adopting and approving said budget. Mr. Guerra, I'll turn it over to you again.
Thank you, Dr. Black. This is what I just presented in the PowerPoint. It's the debt service, the general fund service budget, and the child nutrition budget.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion regarding this agenda item? Ms. Brady?
I move that we accept item 6C as presented.
Okay. Ms. Brady's made a motion that we accept this item as presented. Is there a second? See a second from Ms. Derrick. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please raise their hand. Okay. I see 7 hands up with a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion carries. So we'll move to agenda item 6D now, which is consider approve proposed tax rate for the tax year 2023, including a resolution setting said tax rate. Mr. Guerra?
Thank you, Dr. Black. This is the tax rate that we talked about, that we assured you that there's no new taxes. In fact, it's a lower tax rate, and it's $14.29 overall between M&O and the INS rate.
Okay, thank you. Before I ask for a motion regarding this item, I'll just remind trustees that there's specific wording for any motion to approve a tax rate, so you have that in front of you. Do I have a motion? Ms. Derrick.
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 1.14290, which is effectively an 8.7% increase in the tax rate, with said tax rate consisting of a tax rate of 0.94290 for an M&O and 0.2000 for debt service.
Okay, we have a motion from Ms. Derrick. Is there a second? See a second from Ms. Benavides. Is there any discussion? Ms. Urbacek.
Just a clarifying comment, because I don't know if you mentioned it, but the reason we have those 2 separate tax rates is we cannot take the money from the INS revenue earned from the tax payment there and use it for things like salaries or operations or utilities or anything like that. That is a completely separate bucket of money. And then the other tax rate, the M&O, that's where we get our funding to operate the district on a daily basis for the daily operations. And they cannot mix, I guess.
No, they cannot mix. The M&O is the maintenance and operations, just like everything we need to maintain and operate as a district. The INS rate is the rate strictly for bond money, and it's only for construction.
Thank you, Ms. Urbacek, for that clarification, and Mr. Guerra. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please show by raising your hand. All those opposed? Okay. With a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed, the motion carries. So we'll move now to agenda item number 7, which is comments from board members regarding posted agenda items. Board members, do you have any comments you wish to make at this time related to the posted agenda? Going once? Going twice? Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to agenda item 8, which is adjournment. We've reached the end of our agenda, and we are adjourned at 6:33 p.m. Thank you all very much.